Hoi hoi folks, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name's Sean, aka Uncle Frogface. Welcome to the video. Today I'm going to be sharing with you a speed paint for the Sinix Design 500,000 subscriber Chroma Corps art contest. Wow, that's a mouthful. I'm going to go from pencil sketch and show you how I turn that into a digital sketch, and from there we'll go into full speed paint of the process. So here I've just taken the pencil sketch into Procreate just by importing as an image. I'm using that as the base for the character design. I wanted a kind of classic sci-fi look for this character, so I just started noodling about with different ideas. And fun fact, the initial pencil sketch was actually a 2-minute sketch whilst I was watching Doctor Who. So that's a useless piece of trivia there for you. And I actually came to this project with no real idea of what I wanted to do, so here I'm just doodling different concepts of things that might work. You see, I'm drawing and erasing and drawing and erasing, and some things stick to the wall and some things don't. So I know that I wanted some kind of companion for this character, and I played around with the idea of the orb and then went to maybe like a mechanized lizard. So I thought his character would be like a captain character, so I wanted to go with that kind of classic parrot almost look, and instead settled on this kind of retro futuristic companion. You'll see me playing around with layers a lot. I'm still learning Procreate, and the layer management is not one of my strongest points yet. But here I'm just laying in some base colours, just blocking in the major masses on the face. At this point, most paintings look an absolute mess, but you see I've got my initial sketch on a multiply layer there, so I've always got it there as a reference. And you just have to trust in your skill and the things that you've learned that it's going to come together. At this point the painting is really rough, and it really is just major masses and roughing in. This is just a large shape for the hair, a little bit of shadow and highlight, but nothing's really defined at the moment. It's pushing around paint to where I want it to be. And it's at this point that I realised I was painting on a white background, which is never a good idea. You should always have at least a mid-tone. So I just dropped in this blue colour, and I'll work a bit more on the background a bit later. I'm just defining some of the edges a little bit clearer now. And the reason you want to work more on a toned background is because if you have a pure white background, it's much harder to see the contrast in the lights and darks and the tones of the piece. It's at about this point that I've realised I've spent far too much time on the face, and I should probably move on to the rest of the body. I mean, this is not a tutorial. Definitely don't do what I do. I tend to linger in one place too long, and I don't flip my canvas often enough. All of those little things that I know I should do, I just forget when I'm working. I get far too engrossed in what I'm actually doing. So here we are back to the uniform, and again I'm just really roughing in shapes. The good thing about painting and design is that you can go in and put in some really basic shapes and come back later and cut in with the underlying paint colour and redefine those shapes more. I definitely do that with this. These are literally just the place markers for these items, and I come back later and define them a bit more and add some more detail, but generally I want to give the whole painting a very loose feel. Okay, so at this point I've slowed down the video to show one technique that I like to employ sometimes. I think I might have got this from Marco Bucci, I think I'm pronouncing that right, but it's a way to add graphic elements into a more traditional painterly style. I'm more towards traditional painterly, not so much the graphic, but I really like this technique. It adds a bit of punch, and all I'm doing here is I'm using a marquee tool to mark in some shapes. Some of them define planes of the face, some of them are just where highlights would be, others are just for splashes of colour. And here I'm adding in a yellow because that's a good lighting colour for this scene, playing around with the styles to see what works. And here we're back to normal speeds, painting speed, and you can see I'm just marking these spots, and it works both for shadow and highlight. So here on this side I'm coming in with a blue colour, and that just defines some of the shadow areas. And in a moment you'll notice as well I even come in with a green, because blue and yellow make green, and it's a nice contrast to the kind of sterility of the piece so far. The other good thing about this technique as well is that you actually don't have to keep them as these defined hard edge shapes. I really like a mix of soft and hard edges, so you can come in, either paint over some of the edges or blur them out. You'll see later I have a little bit of difficulty with the eyes. You know, there's always something on a painting that will stick and not go quite right. But I use this technique again by marking in some shapes, and defining eyelids and actually blurring out some of the edges, so there's that nice mix of hard and soft lines. So here you can see I'm marking in some of these pieces now. As I say, there's always something on a painting that will give you trouble, but there's always a way to work around it as well. I actually come in later and add some more shapes to this, and I think what I end up with works quite nicely. And just coming up now, blinking you'll miss it, that was the first canvas flip. Ugh, I'm terrible. I like to experiment quite a lot with my painting, so I'm adding quite a vibrant orange here, and I think I end up knocking it almost completely back because I just didn't like the way it was looking. But that happens quite often. I'll paint something in, take it out. One of the beauties of digital, I suppose, is that all of those layers you can adjust as you go along. But having a good traditional foundation means that, you know, it's a little bit easier to troubleshoot those issues. So that's enough of the face, let's get back to uniform. This is supposed to be a cadet uniform, so for a captain cadet. This is the logo of Chroma Corps, which is a fictional company in the universe that Sinix has created. And I wanted this kind of academy feeling, but military as well. So even though this is a fairly minimalist design, I wanted to have a nod to that kind of regalia that goes along with military academies. So I think at this point I was thinking the eyes still don't look quite right, they're missing something, so I come in with these much lighter shapes to define some of the lids, and this is what I was talking about with pushing back some of the edges. You still have some of that sharp graphic design, but there's also a softness to it as well. So I remember being told a long time ago that if you wanted something to look really gold and metallic, then onto your yellow base. For the highlights you want a more orange colour, but in the shadows you want a more green colour. So I tried that with this, and here I am, I'm going in kind of fiddling with layers, and it didn't quite look right. I don't think it had the right hue of green. So I just delete it, come back again, try again, make sure the shapes are a bit more defined, and you'll see as well I come in with a multiply layer just to add some shadow on that shoulder, and when you knock back some of the shadows in a harsh way, it gives a nice metallic sheen. And this is the point now where I do what I said earlier. I'm really cutting back into the design and just cleaning up the line work. Still keeping it quite painterly, but just neatening it up, adding a few extra small details. So I had the idea that these implants should be more like jewellery than these big mechanized eyepieces and ear pads and God knows what else. I wanted it to almost be like a statement piece. So again, all gold and white. And once all of these pieces are in, you see I come back and I treat it exactly the same way as I did the metal on the uniform. That green sheen, the orange, popping some of the highlights, pushing back what is in shadow further into the background. I think overall I was quite happy with the outcome of this. Yes, the companion droid. If you want to get a nice symmetrical shape and you're painting digitally, then don't worry about freehanding it. Use the lasso tools, make a nice defined shape, then fill it in. It just creates a much nicer shape, and you can come back afterwards and smooth out some of those edges so it doesn't look like it's just stuck onto the piece. That's actually what I did at the end of this. I go back and just rough up some of the edges with either paint or the smudge tool, just to actually make it a part of the piece and not just something that's been added onto it. The eyes were a little bit of a struggle, but the basic idea was that the eyes should kind of match his cybernetic eye, almost like they're connected in some way, that he can control it without physical controls, that he can do that through the implants that he has all over his face. There we go, and this is the point I was talking about, just knocking it back so he looks actually part of the painting and not just a decal stuck onto it. So we're just coming up to the end of the painting now. I think in total from starting the sketch to completing it was about 4.5 hours. I really hope you've enjoyed watching it. As always, there will be a link in the end card to another video you might like. Don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that bell, all that good stuff. I will also leave a link down below for the Sinix Design video that inspired this piece. As always, have a great day, and I'll catch you next time.